Fremont? You are Ben Fremont, manager of the Argus bookstore?
You're putting me on.
Mr. Fremont, I'd better introduce myself officially. I'm Sergeant Kellogg, assigned to the Vice Bureau of the County Sheriff's Office.
I knew you seemed weird.
My partner here is Officer Iverson. Mr. Fremont, we're placing you under arrest under Section 311.2 of the California Penal Code.
What the hell for?
The code states that any person who knowingly offers to distribute any obscene matter is guilty of a misdemeanor. The district attorney feels that the book, The 7 Minutes by J.J. Jadway, would be found obscene if taken to court.
You can't arrest me. I'm just a guy who sells books. I just work here.
Mike, it's Phil. Sanford.
Phil? How the hell are you?
Well, I'll tell you about that in a minute.
Oh, congratulations are in order. I read where you took over your dad's publishing firm.
It's been a year and a half now.
You sound uptight.
Well, the police raided the Argus bookstore in Oakwood.
Yeah, I know the store, but what's that got to do with you?
They arrested the clerk, Ben Fremont, on an obscenity charge for selling a new book of ours, The 7 Minutes by J.J. Jadway. Now, Mike, this book is not pornographic. Anyway, Fremont's been in jail several hours now, and I want to bail out at once.
How do you want to plead? Now, if he pleads not guilty, that means a trial.
I want to get him out of this fast and quietly. I've got to put a stop to the little nuisance arrests like this right at the outset.
Well, now, selling pornography in California is a misdemeanor. See, as I recall, it's a maximum fine of $10,000, a year in jail, plus $5 for every unit of obscene material confiscated.
Mike, but the kid was arrested once before on the same charge.
Excuse me, Phil. You see, that's a felony. Now, that's a $25,000 maximum fine, just for openness, and a year in prison.
Damn it, Mike, I can't let Fremont go to jail for selling Sanford House's book.
Wait a minute, there's one other possibility. I might be able to get the whole thing taken care of quickly and quietly. You enter a no-no plea. Now, that's to say a guilty plea without conceding to the charge. You pay the fine, and you arrange to have the jail sentence suspended. We have a DA out here, a man named Elmo Duncan. Very decent guy. Now, don't worry. I'll see Duncan tomorrow. Arrange for the bail bondsman and looking out Fremont.
Sorry I unloaded on you, buddy, but I'm sure you know that this is pretty important to me.
Get some sleep, huh? Good night, Phil. You're bad. You're really bad, babe. Hey! 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 Come on now. It's after midnight. I'm a bit tired. And you know how I am when I get interrupted.
Cargo, Daddy isn't going to like your dirty book.
Yeah, when I go to work for Daddy. That's when Daddy makes the decisions. Until then, I call my own shots.
Daddy was discussing us today, Michael. He's anxious to know when you're going to make an honest woman out of his daughter.
I've got the message, Miss Osborne.
How is your charming fiancée?
She's fine, sir.
You must remember me to both Faye and your prospective father-in-law. You know, if it weren't for Willard Osborne's dinner parties, I wouldn't have to worry about my weight. What can I do for you, Mr. Barrett?
Well, sir, I'm looking for a favor.
Anything. Anything within reason.
I'm representing the Sanford House from New York City, the publisher of the 7 Minutes.
7 Minutes. Oh, yes. The Fremont case.
That's right. Mr. Duncan, may I ask, have you read the book?
Well, to be quite frank about it, no.
A number of very important critics say that the 7 Minutes is not hardcore pornography. The sort of thing that's dumped into a drugstore by quick buck printers appealing to the one-armed reader. The book is being published by one of the most reputable firms in the book trade.
Well, let's see what it's all about. The complaint was filed by a Mrs. Olivia St. Clair, president of the Strength Through Decency League in Oakwood. A couple of my boys read the book. There's no doubt in their mind it is pornographic. But the real question is whether or not the 7 Minutes is legally obscene by contemporary community standards.
My client has advised me that the Jadway book is no more or less explicit than other works of far less artistic merit. So why the sudden arrest?
Well, my office has been under considerable pressure from Mrs. St. Clair, with some justification. We had to satisfy her.
Then with Fremont's arrest, you appeased the book burner.
We've done our duty, but then you have a duty to your client. I'm willing to cooperate within the limitations of what already has happened.
This would satisfy Sanford. Ben Fremont pleads nolo, pays a stiff fine, and in return, we have his 1-year jail sentence suspended.
You understand, entering a nolo plea is tantamount to pleading guilty, which means the book will be banned in Oakwood.
We don't give a damn about Oakwood. Let it be unavailable there, and that way you satisfy the STDL and their specific community. But still, The 7 minutes could be sold anywhere else in the county.
What you suggested, well, sounds reasonable to me. Now, this is a nuisance matter. We can treat it routinely. I'll smooth out any ruffle feathers in the department, and when that's done, you enter your plea of guilty, and I'll speak to the judge. It probably won't be any more than a fine and a suspended jail sentence.
Fair enough.
I should have something for you about this time tomorrow. Oh, by the way, when you see Willard Osborne, tell him I'm very appreciative of the time and attention his network has given me lately.
Our next senator from the state of California.
Evening, Luther. Baby doll.
Hi.
Harvey. Elmo. Irwin.
If our president had looked that good on television a few years ago, he would have been elected governor instead.
Sorry I'm late, Luther. Things got busy downtown.
Shut that thing off! I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Before we make our move, Elmo has got to become a statewide hero. If the voters can identify with him, we're home free.
2 weeks ago, we found a meaningful issue. Namely, that much of this youthful violence is provoked by salaciousness in reading matter and in films. Then we agreed to try to implement the California Criminal Code on censorship by making an arrest. Thereby using a book as an issue on which to build a statewide case in which Elmo could fight the
Smut merchants.
Yes. And by this act and by the trial that might follow it, Elmo would become known as a protector of the young and an enemy of violence-inciting literature. That is a lot of crap. Enough of the pool. It pits the district attorney against some two-bit book salesman and some obscure printed words that nobody will ever read or even hear about. It should be plain to all of us now that Fremont Rouse was a flop. Let's forget it. Let's go on to something else with a little more promise.
Baby doll, will you stop that?
Now, there's another factor involved here. The publisher of the 7 Minutes is being represented by a Mike Barrett. You might recall that Barrett is engaged to Willard Osborne's daughter, Faye. Now, considering the support I've been getting from Osborne's television network, I think it would be foolish to rock the boat.
29.
Shut that off.
Seconds.
Elmo's right. Forget about this penny ante stuff. Our job tonight is to find that big issue.
Hey, baby, now remember, if you just too small, you ain't tall at all. You remember what the Wolfman says now? We got these brand new Wolfman Jack elevator shoes for you, man. They're gonna blow your mind. You're gonna love them to death, love them to death. And remember, you just slip right into them, man. And listen, if you just can't get it on with your old lady now, you pay attention to it. We got sizes 6 to 12 for those who are small or large, whatever the case might be. We got the shoes just to fit you. It's exactly what you need. You know what I'm talking about. Now, if you want the Wolfman Jack elevator shoes, just send $5 cash, check or money order. No stifferinos. You want good checks, baby. Now remember that. And you send that to Tall Shoes, KMSB, Los Angeles. Oh, if you want to ride, we got a big hit here by Don Reed, man. Ride that love train. Oh, raise your hand in the air. Put your right hand down on the radio. Wolfman Jack, your conductor, man, I got your ticket. We gonna ride that love train. Are you ready? All right. Come here, man. Talk it to yourself right
You poor bastard stud. Make one move from there and I'll put my fist right through your face.
You're gonna get some service.
Howdy, conductor, man. You got Wolfman Jack here. I'm gonna bring you on a train. We gonna ride that love train. Are you ready? All right, come on, ride, baby, now.
You do nice work, George. Our shoes out of sight, Jerry. But you're cool. I ain't gonna tell nobody. You know my philosophy. You keep the good thoughts and then you dump the garbage. Kind of like your biological problem with a chick.
what you're looking for, Griffin?
Where'd you find it?
Next to the broken body of a young girl.
Excuse me, sir. Police Chief Patterson wishes to speak with Mr. Duncan.
Let's take it on the speakerphone.
Yes, sir.
Elmo! Patterson!
What is it, Tim?
Sorry to bother you, Mr. Duncan. About an hour ago, we logged a brutal 907. Rape victim, a 19-year-old Caucasian, Miss Sherry Moore, admitted county hospital in a coma. There's some big game involved.
Who is it?
Frank Griffith's son.
Frank Griffith. Name means nothing to me.
Frank Griffith handles all of Mr. Yerke's advertising. He's also one of the party's biggest contributors.
That's the one. The boy denied raping the girl. He also pleads innocent to injuring her.
Any evidence to indicate the boy was lying?
Now, let me look at the sheet. A wallet, $23 in cash, 3 textbooks in the trunk of his car, a 4th book under the spare tire. And coincidentally, it was the same dirty book involved in that bookseller arrest this morning, the 7 Minutes.
Elmo, tell him goodbye.
Son of a bitch, we've got our case.
Tim, we'll discuss this in the morning.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
What do you mean we've got our case?
Baby dolls, shut off that damn radio.
Can't the next senator from the state of California figure this one out for himself? It's very simple. Frank Griffith's son, a poor kid with a normal sex urge. And they're trying to pin him with breaking and entering.
Maybe the kid is innocent.
Who gives a goddamn? But you know who's responsible? The real criminal? It's that dirty, slimy book, The 7 Minutes, that incited a decent kid from a good family to commit felonious rape.
Yeah, but Luther...
Elmo, we finally got hold of the big issue we've been looking for. Barman, get the car. The book. Blair, call Frank Griffith. Tell him we just heard about his trouble, and we're on our way to help him in any way we can.
He is still innocent until proved guilty in a court of law. What I'm really saying is that the law still gives us certain options.
Are you saying he can still plead not guilty?
Frank, let him finish.
If he pleads not guilty, the case will be placed on a court calendar for trial. If he pleads guilty, the sentence could be anywhere from 15 years to life.
What good's all this? I already told the cops what I did. She hurt herself.
Don't interrupt.
I agree that, as things stand, a not guilty plea would not only be dishonest but futile. Trial a waste of time. Now consider this. Behind closed doors, our district attorney could have a great influence with the judge who was to pass sentence after a plea of guilty for rape.
But I didn't rape her.
The book's the criminal, not the boy. If the 7 Minutes hadn't been available, Jerry would have never committed the crime.
I see. He was temporarily inflamed by that book. He was victimized. Now, we'll need time to let this concept sink into the public mind in order to create an atmosphere much more favorable to Jerry.
Doesn't anything I say mean a damn?
Considering Jerry's condition, I would offer as a defense that he was not legally sane when he allegedly committed the crime. To accomplish this, we'll need the services of a top psychiatrist. I would suggest Dr. Roger Trimble.
I won't let any head trick to pick my brain apart. I'm not crazy.
Louis Polk knows the law. If he says you're seeing a psychiatrist will help you with a judge, it makes sense to do just that. Jerry!
Let your niece calm him down.
Jerry! Maggie, I'm sure they were only trying to be helpful. In their way.
I don't want my brain picked in public.
I understand, Jerry.
I just want to be left alone.
Jerry Griffith is living proof that a dirty book can destroy a clean boy. I'm convinced we're not dealing with a mere felony, but a crime that can endanger public safety, like an epidemic of rape. I was referring to your client's distribution of a menacing work of obscenity, Mr. Barrett. If you plead Ben Fremont not guilty, we will prosecute the defendant to the limit of the law. If you prefer to enter a plea of guilty, the defendant will receive the maximum punishment for his offense, a fine and 12 months in jail. No deal, Mr. Barrett.
That your last word?
Yes, Mr. Barrett. What kind of a plea do you intend to enter? Guilty or not guilty?
I'll have to consult with my client.
There can be no compromise. If you plead guilty, Fremont will go to jail for a year, and the book will be banned in the county as a starter. If the plea is not guilty, you'll have to take your gamble in court.
What really pissed me off was Duncan's attitude. Aside from being obviously hostile, he gave me that politician's holier-than-thou number. A little to the right, honey. Higher. There, right there. That feels good.
Michael, are you considering turning down Dad's position to take on Sanford's case? What's wrong, darling?
I've got a late date with the 7 Minutes. I promised Sanford I'd make my decision about defending the book by tomorrow morning.
And taken in its entirety and not out of context, the book is definitely not obscene.
7 Minutes is a beautiful book. Oh, there's Clay Rutherford right there. He's one of the most thorough investigative attorneys I've worked with.
Mr. Rutherford. Mr. Sanford.
I took the first plane out when Mike told me you two would take the case.
Clay has the lineup of potential witnesses. Why don't we run through them?
Our lineup is exactly one witness.
Oh, you mean so far?
No, Mr. Sanford, I mean one, period.
With the existing political climate, we're not going to find many volunteers for this cause. Tell them who we got, Clay.
Christian LaRue. His firm published the original edition of the book. Now, we've been led to believe that he considered the 7 Minutes to be a work of artistic integrity.
I recall, however, that he sold the world publishing rights to an alleged pornographer named Norma C. Quant.
Any idea of his whereabouts now?
No.
Clay should be able to get a line on him. Our really big issue will be to prove that Jadway wrote the book, honestly, sincerely, and with artistic integrity. That's why LaRue is so important to us.
Hello, Mr. Barrett.
Hi, Donna.
Mr. Rutherford. Sir?
We can also get some mileage out of the findings made by the President's Commission on Obscenity and Pornography. They clearly verified that so-called obscene books and motion pictures do not contribute in any way to an increase in antisocial behavior by adults or juveniles.
Looks like it's not going to be as simple as we thought it was, is it, Mike?
Regrettably, Philip, no. The case is a lot more complicated now.
I guess so. Mike, this might not be the right time to bring this up, but do you want me to stay for the trial? I'm up to here with pre-publication deals back home.
No. As a matter of fact, it might be better to keep you out of the picture entirely until we need you as a witness. One more thing to remember, gentlemen. Elmo Duncan will not be sitting on his ass.
Our critics would like to believe that the church's only interest is in morality and religion, at the sacrifice of freedom of speech. We wish to criticize only those who would abuse this freedom. But we are of the same mind, Your Eminence. We don't want to weaken freedom, but rather reinforce it by penalizing those who would corrupt it. The church has seen fit to extend its cooperation, viewing the 7 Minutes today, just as it did in the 30s, when it was first banned in the Sacred Index, as an extraordinary destructive force. I couldn't be more pleased, Your Eminence. I will enlighten and then help you.
Now, the police report states that they confiscated 80 copies of the 7 Minutes. And the Sanford House Sales Department account shows they shipped 100 copies to the store. Those figures correct?
Uh-huh.
That means you sold 20 copies before you were arrested. Any idea who bought them?
0. I only worked here days.
Have you seen the picture of Jerry Griffith in the newspaper?
His picture and mine, too.
I've got a better shot of him right here, and I want you to take a close look at this. You ever been in the store?
Not that I can recall. With all this publicity, I get phone calls every day asking if I have the book for sale. Even Rachel Hoyt, the head branch librarian for the Oakwood Library, called this morning, very uptight about this attempt to ban the 7 Minutes.
Interesting.
She won't wait to order the book through channels. She wants to pick one up herself, put it on the open shelves, and have a showdown with the old bags who run the Strength Through Decency League.
Would you believe Frank Griffith telling the press that it was J.J. Jadway and his 7 Minutes, not his son, who was responsible for Sherry Moore's brutal attack?
When was the last time you saw Jerry?
That was it. He sent a friend over to return the dictionary.
Do you recall his friend?
A long-haired boy, the only one I saw with Jerry more than once. I think his name was Perkins.
I hear you're a good friend of Jerry Griffith's.
Who told you that?
Head librarian at the Oakwood branch. Said she saw you with him a couple of times.
He's got wheels. He gave me a lift now and then. That's about it.
Well, I was told that you were close friends.
You were told wrong, man.
Did you ever meet any members of Jerry's family?
Nope.
Did you ever hear Jerry discuss his father?
Nope.
When was the last time you saw him?
Maybe a week before he beat on a chick.
And you haven't seen him since?
No. And I wouldn't want to either.
How come?
With all the available chicks around here, who wants to run with a guy that gets it that way? That's a bummer.
I hear he reads a lot.
What the hell do these look like? Everybody reads a lot here.
Yeah, I guess you're right. But I'm only interested in one particular book. Have you ever seen him reading the 7 Minutes or discussing it?
Oh, you're sounding like a pig. Like a stinking pig. Fuck off!
The services of Father Safati, one of the 2 priests directly in charge of the Sacred Index, has been offered as a leading witness for your prosecution. Father Safati is prepared to make public all the classified information the church has on the infamous book and its equally infamous author. Do you wish him as a witness for the prosecution? Yes, Your Eminence. I must have him. When do you want him in here? Within 3 days. 4 at the most. I will notify the Vatican. Father Safati will be here. And the Lord will bless our cause.
I'm Olivia St. Clair, president of the Oakwood chapter, Strength Through Decency League. Most of you already know that our president has called for a citizens' crusade against obscenity, both in print and in pictures. And that's just what the STDL is trying to implement. Our work was never more important than it is today. The fact
What a big rush. Not exactly like you're the guest of honor. Hey, there's someone I know. Maggie, how are you? Good to see you, Faye. Oh, forgive me. Meet my fiancé, Maggie Russell. Michael Barrett, how do you do? I thought I recognized
You
you.
mean those terrible nursepaper pictures do me justice?
I happen to have a special interest in your case.
concerted, hard-hitting action. And by that, I mean vigorous, positive enforcement of existing
We'd better grab a
laws all
seat.
over the country. And
See you around, Maggie.
gracious Americans, like our guest of honor today, to do the enforcing. It is now with the greatest of pleasure that I give you our county's distinguished and eminent district attorney, Mr. Elmo Duncan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Glad you all could make it. Mrs. St. Clair has asked me to say a few words on the subject of pornography as related to our permissive society. I cannot think of a subject which is more relevant. There is virtually no area that remains untainted by the quick buck artists who pander to our lowest forms of taste, and the public be damned. Just the other evening, my first night off in weeks, I decided to take my wife Mary and our 3 children to the movies. In our neighborhood, we had such subject material as rape, lust, motorcycle gangs, homosexuals, lesbians,
Take a walk. I'll be right back.
you name it. Whatever happened to the movies we used to be able to take our children to.
Remember to tell me what I missed.
The films that offered real movie stars. Like the charming lady seated to my left, Miss Constance Cumberland. Never in the history of our great nation has there been such a proliferation of obscene material on the screen, the magazine racks, and the bookshelves.
Miss Russell, while I had a chance, I wanted to have a few words with you about your relatives, the Griffiths. Now you mentioned your relationship with Jerry.
And
Well, she said you were very close to him.
we're not only relatives, we're friends. I'm prepared to defend Jerry against anyone who wants to hurt him.
Well, I have no reason to hurt Jerry. My interest in him is merely professional. You see, from what I know about juvenile delinquency, I'm not convinced that reading matter alone can be held responsible for antisocial acts. I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk about this.
I won't even dignify the thought of such a discussion.
I suppose it'd be foolish of me to ask if Jerry's father would see me.
You can't be serious, Mr. Barrett. You're annoying me.
Well, I'm sorry, I really am. But you could have snubbed me. Good manners, Miss Russell?
Not good manners, Mr. Barrett. I just wanted to find out if you were really the kind of son of a bitch everyone said you were.
Jerry, I feel these sessions can be very beneficial to you.
I don't like to talk about myself.
Well, I'm afraid your father and Mr. Yerkes have other plans concerning your cooperation this afternoon.
You tell him his loser company ain't worth that much money. We'll fly him back from the goddamn safari. When people find out he's killing defenseless animals with a machine gun, it's 86 for him anyway. What an idea for Art Buckwald's column. How'd it go?
Well, Jerry is completely ambivalent about Sherry Moore. On the one hand, he hates to discuss the circumstance, but on the other, when he does discuss it, he reveals a certain pride in the act.
What else?
Jerry also has a wish for self-destruction, possibly real, but more likely fantasy. I feel he should be subjected to as few pressures as possible.
Frank, the boy needs help. He's in bad shape. What the hell's wrong now? We'll never get him to testify until we get him back on the track. I think the kid and Trimble should get together every day between now and the trial.
Well, that makes a great deal of sense.
Fine. Now let's see what's happening in the other room. Good to see you, Merle. Griffith, Trimble, come over here. I want you to meet Merle Reed, a truly great American.
Reed, this is a real pleasure. I catch your newscast every night.
You flatter me, Mr. Griffith.
I hope you tell that to the rating surveys when they call. I'm really looking forward to this, Luther. When my viewers see what the smut peddlers have done to that poor young boy, you'll have a groundswell of sentiment big enough to swamp the Queen Mary.
Good man.
Hey, Beverly. Well, Jerry, you won't feel a thing. You have nothing to worry about.
Anytime you're ready, Mr. Reed. We're rolling.
Speed. Jerry Griffith interview. Take one.
And action, Mr. Reed.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sitting in the home of the Frank Griffith family. An average American family, if you will, until the night before last, when a shattering experience catapulted them into the headlines. Young Jerry Griffith, whom you see seated beside me, was taken into police custody and charged with a most heinous crime. A crime which had been perpetrated by the reading of an awful, ugly, and yes, I'll use the word, a patently obscene book. Until now, not one soul from the television media has been granted the opportunity of speaking with young Jerry. But he and his father have graciously allowed me the privilege of being the first and only newsman to hear the family's side of the story. Tell me, Jerry, was the 7 minutes part of your reading assignments at the university?
I really don't want to talk about it.
I couldn't be more in sympathy with your feelings. But the public does have a right to know how this book led you astray. Tell us now exactly how the 7 minutes prompted you to run out and violate this girl.
I don't want to talk about it!
the first time in my newscasting career, I am speechless. Permit me, however, to leave you with this question. How many other killer books are in the hands of your sons and daughters? Yes, your sons and daughters this very moment.
Now, you've seen what a dirty book can do to a youngster.
No, I've seen sickness, Mr. Yerkes, but it wasn't caused by any book. You better go shopping for a new psychiatrist. You can't afford
Now,
me.
just a minute, you.
That footage on his cracking up is going to be great. Simply first class.
Operator, this is KME 515. KME CR 72211, please.
Barrett and Rutherford.
Donnie, are you still taking those courses at the university?
Yes, sir. 3 nights a week.
Any rap about Jerry Griffith?
One girl in my econ class did mention that she saw him occasionally at the Lubrac.
Oh, really? I'll be up in a couple of minutes.
Yes, sir, Mr. Barrett.
Barry, you the lawyer who's defending that dirty book?
Yes, I...
I'm Sherry Moore's father, you son of a bitch, and I'm warning you to keep your goddamn nose out of our private affairs. My poor girl's damn near dead because some little punk was made crazy by your damn dirty book. Well, I've had it. You hear me?
Lucky you got him here when you did. Another 5 minutes and he'd have been finished. He gave me this piece of paper with a name and phone number on it. Said it was the only one to be contacted.
I thought I told you. Jerry. He can't be with you. He's not allowed to leave the house. What happened? Where? I'll be right there.
Dr. Quigley's a good man. He'll make a discreet report and everything will be kept very quiet.
I just can't imagine what made Jerry do it. I'd like to ask you something.
Go ahead.
Were you following Jerry?
No. He was looking for someone else, one of his friends. George Perkins.
I'm sorry. You must think I suspect every move you make.
Music?
Jerry was bugged by a couple of things that happened at the house today.
Now, no one expects you to be unfaithful to the cause.
Luther Yerkes was there today. He brought over a psychoanalyst, and Jerry was forced to go into therapy with this guy against his will.
Luther Yerkes. Not the Griffiths. Well, until now, I'd only heard rumors that he was backing Duncan for the Senate.
Then Mr. Yerkes wheeled out Merle Reed to interview Jerry on coast-to-coast television.
You know, I was thinking...
Excuse me, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You know, my whole attitude toward you has changed 180 degrees. Before I came to work for the Griffiths, there was a woman working there as a practical nurse to Mrs. Griffith. After she quit or was fired or whatever happened, that's when I was off the job. Maybe that woman could give you a little help.
Do you remember her name?
Isabel Vogler. She lived out in Laureldale. That's the most I can offer you by way of appreciation for what you did tonight.
Thank you.
Now I've got to run. Thank you.
I'd like to see you again. No crying, I promise. Strictly social.
It's tempting. But I'm afraid not. If I was seen with you in public. But if I can ever help you in any way that doesn't jeopardize my relationship with the family, well, you have my private number.
I'll remember that.
Oh, by the way, I read The 7 Minutes. It's a beautiful book.
You've got a suspicious look on your face. How can you drink that in the morning?
Is that why you stopped by? To check on my drinking habits?
You were supposed to call last night.
I get into this thing. Part of the investigation. You know the woman you passed by on the way out of here? Well, that was the former housekeeper for Frank Griffith, Mrs. Isabel Vogler. Now, she's agreed to testify at the trial about the conditions existing in the Griffith home, particularly as to how they affected one Mr. Jerry Griffith.
Can you trust someone like that?
Mrs. Vogler is as trustworthy as any of Tompkins' witnesses. So why the sudden concern?
I'm just worried about the nasty people you're becoming associated with over an unworthy piece of trash.
First of all, the book isn't a piece of trash. There's no one around to contaminate me, so let's cool it, huh? Well, I gotta get to the office now or I'll be late. Faye, I really am sorry about last night. See you later, make up for it, huh?
Both good and bad news, Mike.
Give me the bad first.
Rue sold out for a higher price, and he's flying in from Paris to testify for Duncan. The good news is that I've located Norman C. Quant.
Hey, that's great. Where is he?
He operates something called the, Arts and Sciences Cinema Company at 348 Donovan Drive.
What is he entitled?
Quant's probably one of the leading manufacturers of pornographic movies on the West Coast. Nudies, beavers, the whole bit.
When can I see him?
Right now, man. He's expecting you.
I'm on my way.
Okay, doke.
There's nothing dirty about these pictures. Now back to that creep LaRue. Let's go up to my office and check the files. Back in 47, I flew over to Paris to get a first-hand look at some of the highly touted French stuff. My contact was LaRue, a publisher of dirty books and part-time pimp. Among other things, he made me an offer of 3 raunchy paperbacks. One of them was for 7 minutes.
Do you recall him saying anything about the author of the 7 Minutes, J.J. Jadway?
Yeah, in fact, he turned over a packet of letters written by Jadway to his mistress, some chick named
Nancy McGraw?
Yeah.
You mean you actually have letters written by Jadway?
Until a week ago, I unloaded them on an autograph dealer in New York.
Can you give me his name, the autograph?
You got a deal, Mr. Barrett. I can send the letters out to you, COD in the morning.
No, I need them sooner than that. I'm flying to New York tonight. I'll be in your shop between 9 and 10, and I'll pay in cash.
As you wish, sir.
Right. Jadway speaking from the grave. Those letters can wipe out LaRue's contention that Jadway was a money-hungry pornographer. And we've got Isabel Vogler to put down Jerry Griffith's testimony that the book alone turned him on. We have finally get it together. Yeah, darling.
There's an urgent call from Miss Osborne on 3.
Thank you. Hello, pretty lady.
Michael, I know you canceled out on me tonight because you're loaded with work, but I have to see you. It's terribly important.
I'm flying out of here tonight at 8 o'clock. I tell you what. You can pick me up and drive me to the airport, and we'll talk on the way.
I'll pick you up at 7:15. Mr. Griffith places a large amount of advertising on Dad's television stations, so naturally you can understand how Daddy felt when he heard you were going to call a witness who would malign Frank Griffith.
How did Dad feel?
Concerned enough to pay a visit to Mr. Griffith to prepare for any libel Mrs. Vogler might be offering.
Beautiful.
After his talk with Griffith, Dad was convinced Mrs. Vogler is a psychopathic liar.
Okay, so now you've told me the urgent news. What else?
Dad wants me to tell you any thought you have of using Isabel Vogler on the witness stand is out of the question. He was positive about that.
Oh, was he now?
I promised him that once I spoke to you, there would be no problem.
But there is a problem, Faye. I will use Mrs. Vogler on witness stand.
You're behaving like an ass. I can't believe you gave up everything to defend your little house of filth. I won't accept it.
You better, Faye, because I just can't read your terms.
Then you are an ass, and you're second-rate, Mike, and I only have time for number 1.
Michael Barrett.
Mr. Barrett?
That's right. I spoke to you yesterday afternoon about the Jadway letters. Oh, I know I should have been here earlier, but I got hung up in traffic. Nevertheless, I'm here. If I could see those letters, please.
But, sir, Mr. Barrett has already picked up those letters.
I beg your pardon.
A gentleman came by here a minute or two after I opened this morning. He paid the $800, and I gave him the letters, and he left immediately.
That can't be. I can prove who I am. Well, look at it!
Then who the hell was it that came by here and picked up your purchase this morning?
Well, Mr. Adams, that's what I'd like you to tell me. Can you describe him for me?
He was much taller than you, formal, very dignified. I really didn't pay much attention.
Well, thanks for your trouble.
I am deeply sorry, Mr. Barrett. Well, good luck to you.
Yeah. Donna, I'm catching the first flight back to the coast. Oh, before I forget, tell Clay that I'll call Sanford and brief him on his coming appearance in court. Yeah, operator. I'd like to make a long-distance call to Miss Maggie Russell.
Hello.
Hello, Maggie. Michael Barrett here. Now, I know your rules, but I really have to see you. It's important.
Is this strictly business or business and pleasure?
Well, it's partly business, but seeing you would be a pleasure.
Won't Faye Osborne mind?
Well, we're not seeing each other anymore.
Oh. Where are you now?
Manhattan?
Manhattan.
Yep. Now it's 3:30 New York time, and I can meet you in my office 8 o'clock your time. They got away with it.
With what?
They planted a monitor in my phone. Then they decided to remove the evidence, and yours truly stumbled in on them. It's not the first time. There have been half a dozen other incidents just as incredible. Mrs. Isabel Vogler suddenly refusing to testify, the loss of some original Jadway letters, and the real stunner was the loss of LaRue, the Frenchman who first published the 7 Minutes. Now he's saying Jadway's nothing more than a squalid pornographer, and the man with the big checkbook's got the advantage. Very good.
Shall we? I have an early day tomorrow. And if you're going to be in shape for court, you should have been in bed an hour ago.
Why, hello, Miss Russell.
Oh, Mr. Blair.
I'll tell you one thing. Those broads are not acting. Focus. Focus! God damn it, we're missing the best part. That's better. Where did we get this stuff, Elmo? Norman C. Quant, S.O.B. One of these days I'm going to throw him in the slammer and toss away the key. Now, hold it, Elmo. He may not be an L.B. mayor, but you've got to admit he makes great pictures. Besides, we've got to protect the public. Yerkes here.
Mr. Yerkes, I'm over here at the Days. Just 5 minutes ago, I ran into Maggie Russell, Frank Griffith's niece. And who do you think she was with? Michael Barrett, counselor for the defense.
Thanks, Blair. Son of a bitch! God damn her! Wait until I put that girl on the carpet. Hold it, Frank, hold it. If you kick her ass out, she could very easily be used as a witness against us. You agree, Elmo? It's a possibility, Luther. That's why we're not going to interfere with Maggie and Barrett. May turn out to be an advantage. Advantage? How? Tell her you heard that she was out with Barrett, but you're going to be just as sweet as honey. Buy her story, whatever she says. You're the great white father, trying to protect his son.
I approve, Griffith. I agree with Luther 100%.
How sure is this?
It's an inspired approach. For you, for your son, and for our common cause.
The state of California has charged an unknown bookseller named Ben Fremont with selling filth in the form of an underground novel, The 7 Minutes, which was written by an expatriate author, J.J. Jadway, over 3 decades ago. Now, this trial has generated enormous interest, and in light of impending Supreme Court hearings on the question of obscenity in films and reading matter, this case could assume a stature of national importance.
Please rise. Face the flag of our country, recognizing the principles for which it stands, liberty and justice for all. Department 101 of the Superior Court of the State of California is now in session. The Honorable Nathaniel Upshaw, judge presiding. Please be seated and no smoking.
The case of the people of the state of California versus Ben Fremont. Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are the people ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may call your first witness, Mr. Duncan.
I call Sergeant Frank Kellogg of the County Sheriff's Department to the stand. Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name for the record.
Sergeant Frank Kellogg, County Sheriff's Office, Administrative Vice.
Please be seated.
Sergeant Kellogg is the man who sold you a copy of the 7 Minutes in this courtroom.
Yes, sir, he is.
Would you point him out to the court, please?
That's him.
Let the record show, Your Honor, the witness, Sergeant Kellogg, indicated the defendant, Ben Fremont, seated to the left of defense counsel. Did Mr. Fremont make any comment about the book? Any reference to its erotic explicitness?
Well, the defendant, Mr. Fremont, told me it was the most banned book in history. He said, and I quote, "It was banned in every country in the world because it was considered obscene." Those were Mr. Fremont's own words.
Your witness, Mr. Barrett.
Sergeant Kellogg, on your visit to the Argus bookstore, did you impersonate an ordinary customer?
No, sir, that's not quite true.
Since you intended to buy the book for the purposes of assembling evidence against the defendant, didn't you feel dishonest about representing yourself as a customer?
Objection. The witness's feelings are immaterial. Objection sustained.
Forgive me, Your Honor. Sergeant Kellogg, why was it necessary to use a concealed tape recorder?
Well, that's standard operating procedure. If we were going to bust a hooker... arrest a prostitute, we'd do the same thing. That's perfectly legal.
Well, I won't bother to comment on the ethics of those vice officers who circulate among bars trying to entrap prostitutes. But I do wonder how you feel about entrapping a respectable bookseller with leading questions and concealed tape recorders.
My next witness, in a manner of speaking, will be the book itself. I now submit that the 7 Minutes be read aloud to the members of the jury, so that for the first time they may become acquainted with its contents in its entirety. Seated in the witness box is a neutral, impartial citizen, a Mr. Charles Winter, a substitute high school teacher locally, who in his spare time tapes recordings for the blind and is accustomed to reading aloud without over-dramatizing or unduly emphasizing specific passages.
Objection, Your Honor. With all due deference to the blind, the prosecution's remarks are deliberately intended to appeal to the sympathy of the jury.
Objection overruled. The district attorney's description of Mr. Winter leaves no doubt of his ability to remain impartial. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, while I already have this person available, I would willingly agree to let anyone of Mr. Barrett's choosing read the book aloud to the jury.
Your Honor, what I care about is the book being read aloud. A novel is not meant to be presented in such a fashion. That is my only objection.
Your objection, Mr. Barrett, is overruled. Mr. Winter may begin reading the book in manner so prescribed by the court. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Winter. You may begin, but please address the reading to the jury. A touch. Is that you? My other lips swell in joyous welcome. God, I have missed you. There. Now move slowly past my moist lips. Darling, let me kiss all of you. Feel me close around you in sweet embrace.
Your Honor, I would like to record my concern about one mannerism possessed by the reader, Mr. Winter, which may be prejudicial to the defense. The reader is placing undue emphasis by raising his eyes on certain passages which might be termed sexually realistic.
Mr. Barrett, I have been watching Mr. Winter closely. I am satisfied he is performing in a manner as mechanical and objective as possible for a human being. I must deny your request. Please resume, Mr. Winter. You are so strong, and yet when we are together, we both grow weak with the delicious perfection of our union. This is your home. This is the reason for our existence. As a noted British publisher of quality books and a highly recognized authority in the continental trade, Mr. Van Fleet, do you feel that Jadway, the author of the 7 Minutes, tried to give the reader some understanding or vision of love?
Mr. Jadway knew nothing of love. Let me tell you a favorite anecdote about Jadway. The story comes firsthand from a simply marvelous study entitled Outside the Mainstream. The author is Dr. Hiram Eberhardt, a highly respected professor at Columbia University. Now, I'm going to quote from him directly.
Your Honor, I object. This supposed anecdote from that book would represent the rankest form of hearsay. I object to any reading from outside the mainstream whatsoever.
I'm conversant with Dr. Eberhardt and believe his book to be very material, counsel.
Don't antagonize them.
The witness will continue.
One night, after listening to a prize fight on the radio, a contest in which Joe Louis wrested the heavyweight championship from one James Braddock, Jadway told friends who had been listening to it with him that love between a man and a woman was most often performed like a prize fight. When Jadway was asked to give examples of books that depicted the more common hostile love, he cited Henry Miller's Tropic of Capricorn, which he had just read, as a book that reflected the brutality of love.
One of your witnesses, Elmo, has got to be a thinking man's faggot. Those queens are so afraid of anything straight, they're bound to be on our side.
Throughout the 7 Minutes is an act of hatred against womanhood. Jadway has unconsciously taken on the role of a pugilist, attempting to down and humiliate the opposite sex. End quote. I find myself in total agreement with Dr. Eberhard.
How much did we offer to pay him to testify? Transportation plus 5 big ones.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name for the record.
My name is Christian Leroux.
Please be seated.
I wonder how much he got from the DA. You better believe it wasn't chopped liver.
Mr. LaRue, what is your present occupation?
I'm a publisher of books.
When did you first become a publisher?
In 1933, my father died, leaving me a very modest inheritance. So I established my own publishing house, the Étoile Presse.
Is this the same publisher that brought out a work of fiction in 1935 entitled The 7 Minutes by J.J. Jadway?
The same.
Mr. LaRue, I have seen your original version of this book, which was printed in English. Since it was published in Paris, why was it not in the French language?
The French government wouldn't permit its publication in French.
Why not?
The Censorship Bureau declared it was obscene.
Obscene. To your knowledge, has the 7 Minutes ever been published in any other country, in any other language?
Oh, no. Absolutely no nation in the world would pass on it or even accept it. Literary critics in many countries regarded it as the most depraved book ever published in the history of literature.
Your Honor, I object to Mr. LaRue's self-serving answer, and I ask that it be stricken on the grounds that it is incompetent.
I think that the witness is qualified to give that answer. Motion to strike is denied and objection overruled. Proceed, Mr. Duncan. Mr. LaRue, what kind of commercial success did the 7 Minutes have in France?
Well, not as much as we'd hoped. My initial printing was 5,000 copies. These sold out in a year. Then I ordered a press run of another 5,000 copies. But the sales slowed down and eventually stopped. That is after the Vatican placed the book on the index.
Father Sarfati, you testified that the curio offices have been revamped and streamlined since J.J. Jadway's book was first published in 1935.
Yes, in 1966, in keeping with the new ecumenical council spirit which pervaded the church and all of Christendom, Pope Paul VII abolished the title of the Supreme Congregation of the Holy Office because it had long been held offensive by Protestants who associated it with what they regarded as persecution in early church history.
Is it not true, Father, that at the convening of the Ecumenical Council, there were numerous Roman Catholic clerics who protested against the old Holy Office, the very office that condemned Jadway, because it did not hold fair hearings for authors?
The Catholic Church is a democratic body. Its bishops and cardinals are given total freedom in the formation of their opinion. There were those who chose to express some measure of disagreement with the rulings of the Holy Office.
Would it not follow, then, Father, that in view of the new liberality on the part of the Church, that what the Church condemned and prohibited in 1935, it might not condemn and prohibit today?
Signore, sir, that is a hypothetical question which I have neither the qualifications nor the authority to answer. Let me say this, however, that I am here before you as a representative of the Vatican because the Church is just as concerned today as it was in 1935 about the publication and circulation of an immoral and sacrilegious work of fiction entitled The 7 Minutes.
You got it now, Harvey? I want you to hit them with as many numbers as possible. Make it sound like this dame is second cousin to every one of those clowns in that jury box.
Our average woman resides in an urban area, a city of less than 100,000 population, which qualifies Oakwood to supply this woman. She has a 5-room home worth $11,000. Half the house is mortgaged. The house has a bathtub, a shower, flush toilet, electricity, 1 telephone, 1 TV set, and a washing machine. No air conditioning, no clothes dryer, no food freezer. The average woman spends 7 hours a day in the kitchen performing her household chores.
Very impressive, Mr. Underwood. You've covered everything except her frequency of elimination and the time of day she prefers to fornicate.
Let us observe some of the rules of taste, Counselor, and would you please refrain from turning your back to the court?
Forgive me, Your Honor, but I feel the court should be a little more enlightened about the average person, especially in relationship to statistics. Now, as I understand it, 51% of the population of the United States is female, while 49% is male. Now, according to what you've said, that means the average American is only female. Now, is that true?
Of course not. One can't average 2 absolutes. I was referring to concepts that can be converted into statistics, such as age or income.
Oh, I appreciate you wanting to talk about numbers, Mr. Underwood, but I want to talk about persons. Specifically, the average person mentioned in the criminal code. Let me ask the jury this. Supposing 50% of the American population was male and 50% was female, wouldn't the average American be a queer?
Now that we've established your qualifications as an average housewife to the court's satisfaction, Mrs. White, can you tell us whether you read a novel called The 7 Minutes, written by J.J. Jadway?
I have. I forced myself to read it from cover to cover.
As an average person in your community, applying contemporary standards, what was your reaction to this book?
I found it sickeningly obscene.
Did you feel it went beyond the customary limits of candor in its description of nudity or sex?
The 7 Minutes belongs in the garbage disposal. If I had one, that's where the book would go.
Did you find anything in the novel that could be considered as having social redeeming importance?
It was sex and more sex, and nothing else. I never laid eyes on reading matter more obscene.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Your witness, Counselor.
Mrs. White, since you were the first average woman I've ever met, I'm eager to know a little more about your taste. I'm anxious to know if your reading habits are also average.
They are.
Oh. How do you know they are?
I read a lot. All the popular things that come into the library. And in paperback.
Have you ever read Peyton Place by Grace Metalius?
Of course not.
Have you read God's the Laker by Erskine Caldwell?
No, I haven't.
Have you read Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence?
I have not.
Have you read In His Steps by Charles Sheldon?
No. I never even heard of it.
That's very interesting, Mrs. White. Then by Mr. Underwood's standards, your reading habits are far from average. You see, the 4 novels I've just mentioned have sold over 30 million copies in this country alone.
To which I object, Your Honor. The counsel is badgering the witness in front of the jury and is asking questions in argumentative form. I know 20 books that outsold the novels Barrett mentioned.
Those are 4 of the 5 all-time leading bestsellers in American history.
Gentlemen, let's proceed in an orderly fashion. I expect both of you to abide by the rules of evidence. Now let's get on with the trial.
Mrs. White, would the average American read the 7 minutes?
Absolutely not.
But you're supposedly average. And you read it, didn't you?
I was requested to read it for this trial.
Oh, otherwise, you would not have read it.
Most certainly not. I don't waste my time with obscene reading.
But Mrs. White, how would you know it was obscene if you didn't read it?
I don't have to drink poison to know that it's poison.
Do you believe that writers should say what they mean when writing about sex?
Yes. But they can do that without using indecent words, like the words in that book.
Can you be specific about the words in the 7 minutes that offended you?
Well, I'm certainly not going to use them.
Point them out. Let me see what you object to. Go ahead. The book won't bite. Very fine, Mrs. White. I appreciate your cooperation. Now, what we have here is the word fucking. Is that correct? Excuse me, Mrs. White. That is the word you object to.
Disgusting.
Would you have been happier if the writer had used such euphemisms as they slept together, they were intimate, or they made love?
I would have understood just as well what the author was trying to say.
But you could have been wrong. If Kathleen and her man had slept together, were intimate, or they made love, they might have been doing many other things other than the only exact word for this particular act. It cannot be mistaken. Mrs. White, I'm not advocating that coarse or vulgar words should be used by everyone everywhere. I am saying that writers from Chaucer to Jadway should be allowed and permitted the freedom to use specific, precise words when writing realistically. Now, wouldn't you agree, Mrs. White?
I am not interested in the past, Mr. Barrett. I'm interested in protecting our morality in the present, especially the morality of our young people, so that our civilization doesn't decay and decline the way others have done.
Thank you.
Remember that part of Van Fleet's testimony when he mentioned the anecdote about the night Jadway was listening to Joe Louis win the heavyweight title by knocking out Braddock?
Yeah?
When did Jadway die?
February 1937.
Correct. Jadway killed himself and was promptly cremated in February 1937. But here we have Dr. Eberhard telling us how Jadway read and discussed Tropic of Capricorn. Capricorn wasn't published until 1939.
Well, maybe Dr. Eberhard confused this source of information. He confused Tropic of Capricorn with Tropic of Cancer, which I'm damn well sure was published while Jadway was still very much alive.
No, listen to this. Page 624. Joe Louis knocked out Jim Braddock in the 8th round in Chicago in June 1937. Get it? June 1937. That means that Jadway was listening to the fight 4 months after he was supposed to be dead. How does that grab you?
A lot better.
The distinguished Dr. Eberhard may have been wrong a second time, but twice in one paragraph from a renowned scholar. Highly unlikely. This gives us a new and revived Jadway, who did not die in February 1937, as LaRue and the priest testified. It gives us Jadway very much alive 4 months later. For that matter, is he even dead?
Clay, we're back in business. You handle the cross-examination tomorrow? If I answer, I can catch the late flight to New York. Eberhard could save our lives.
A mistake could have been made only by my source.
Dr. Eberhard, but I was unaware that there was any source involved, other than yourself. You see, I assumed that you were present when Jadway made
I was not.
My confidential source was one of Jedway's closest friends in Paris in the 1930s.
Who was he?
Well, considering how I was misled, I see no reason not to reveal his name. I acquired the information from a poet named Sean O'Flanagan.
My name's Michael Barrett. Yes, hello?
Depends.
Could I buy you a drink?
Grab a chair. Dennis, a flagon of your best brandy with a washer back. What can I do for you, young man?
Well, sir, I'm the lawyer defending the reputation of your old friend, J.J. Jadway.
Oh, yes, the 7 minutes. Dr. Hiram Everhard led me to believe that you were one of Jadway's closest friends. Correct, young man. That's precisely why I won't discuss the subject. Keep the change.
Thank you.
On the contrary, Mr. O'Flanagan, the senses won't let him rest. If I could only find out when Jadway died and how. Suicide. Jumped into the Grand Canal, the poor wretched soul. Drowned.
When was that?
Allow me. Year of our Lord, 1937, Anno Domini, amen.
Then there appears to be a slight contradiction in testimony concerning the date of Jadway's death, based on the material that you supplied, Dr. Everhard.
Everhard put it down wrong. I didn't hear me right.
He taped the interview with you.
I guess I screwed up my dates and time. But I remember Jadway's death as if it were yesterday. It was in all the papers. Hurled himself from a 6-story apartment building in San Francisco.
A minute ago, you had him drowning in the Grand Canal.
Did I now?
Isn't it possible you could have made a mistake about the date of Jadway's death? Maybe he died in 1939 or 40, instead of 1937.
And that's not possible. Jadway was alive long after that. Enlisted the day after Pearl Harbor. Made mincemeat of the Kaiser.
The Kaiser. It was World War I.
A pity you can't ask Cassie McGraw about that.
Whatever happened to her?
Only the shadow knows. Good day to you, Mr. Battle.
Michael! Michael, over here!
Maggie.
Somebody once told me that happiness is being met at the airport. I had to see you.
You look great.
I thought you'd be interested in what happened in court. I spent the day in the gallery.
You must be psychic. Things are so tight trying to make the plane, I didn't have a chance to call the office.
Duncan brought out 2 more literary experts, a professor from Colorado and a syndicated book reviewer. They both said the book was obscene and they put it down for its prurient appeal. He also dragged in the 2 cops who found Sherry Moore and the physician who examined her after the raid.
I'm sure Kay didn't let Duncan get away with those cheap courtroom theatrics.
Evidence of sperm within the vagina.
Objection! The violation of Miss Moore has nothing to do with this alleged obscenity case.
Your Honor, the police witnesses are the foundation for Jerry Griffith's appearance. This is relevant and material because I will show that the obscene pages from the Jadway book created the wish to commit rape within Jerry Griffith and then drove him to act out this wish.
So what else have I missed?
Well, for one thing, you have no idea of the conflict going on at the house over Jerry's testifying.
Is he still resisting?
I want to ask you not to put Jerry on the witness stand. Before you say anything, let me finish. And I won't say do it for me, Mike, but for Jerry's sake alone, please waive your cross-examination.
I'm sorry, Maggie, but I can't betray the people who retained me. The DA's had it all his own way so far. And now he plans to prove the dangerous influence of Jadway's writing by hitting us with Jerry Griffith. Now, this is our first opportunity to stop him.
But Jerry is paralyzed with fear over the cross-examination. He might even try to take his own life again.
But if we don't defend ourselves here, then we go under. In the sense of strike another important blow against free speech. If I had LaRue, Mrs. Vogler, even that little, like a star witness like Cassie McGraw.
And you can have her, Mike. You promised not to cross-examine Jerry, and I promised to get you Cassie McGraw herself.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. State your name for the record. Jerry. Jerome Griffith. Please be seated.
Jerry Griffith, may I ask what is your present occupation?
Student.
Jerry, would you mind speaking up? You said...
I'm a student.
How long have you been at the university?
Almost 2 years.
Before this year, or let's say during your last year of high school, your first 2 years of college, how frequently did you go on dates with girls?
It's hard to remember. I can't remember how frequently.
Well, can you give an approximation how frequently?
Objection, Your Honor. The witness has stated that he does not remember. I'm going to object on the grounds that the question has been asked and answered. Also, it's speculative.
Objection sustained. Jerry, what is your major?
English literature.
Do your courses demand considerable reading? Say at least 3 books a week.
Objection. The district attorney is leading the witness.
Overruled. The witness may answer the question. Thank you, Your Honor. Is it a fact that you read at least 3 books a week?
Yes, sir.
Do you also read other books on your own, so to speak? That is, books not on a required list for your English courses.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever read a book called The 7 Minutes by J.J. Jadway?
Yes, sir, I have.
From cover to cover? Every word of it?
Yes, sir.
What was your reaction to the book?
Objection! The witness's reaction to the book is highly immaterial. No evidence has been produced by the prosecution showing this witness to be a literary expert. Mr. Griffith's reaction is highly irrelevant, speculative, and having nothing whatsoever to do with the merits of this trial.
Mr. Barrett, I must warn you against making speeches for the jury's benefit.
I find the prosecutor's line of questioning to be highly probative and material to the issue of whether or not the 7 minutes is obscene. The jury is admonished to disregard defense counsel's argument before the court. You may proceed, Mr. Duncan, hopefully without any interruptions from Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jerry, what was your reaction to the reading of the 7 minutes?
I was upset.
What do you mean, upset?
I was mixed up inside. All mixed up. I couldn't sleep.
Did you go to school the next day?
Yes, but I cut some of my late afternoon classes.
Why?
I had my mind on that book. I kept it in my car. And I drove around for a while. And then I found a lonely road up in the hills. And I reread parts of the book.
Can you recall what sections you reread?
I don't remember exactly. Some of the first chapter. The first of the 7 minutes in the story. I read that several times.
What was in those pages?
I don't remember exactly.
If I may refresh your memory of that part, Jerry. She is lying naked, and she thinks of the statues of Priapus that stood on some of the streets of ancient Greece. Statues consisting of a bust of a bearded man, set on a stone base or block, and out of the center of the statue, there projected a giant face.
Object to the prosecutor's leading and suggestive reading pointedly out of context. Mr. Duncan should be conversant with the fact that a work, whether it be writing or motion pictures, must be considered as a whole, particularly when the question of obscenity hangs in the balance.
Mr. Barrett, my patience is stretched to the breaking point. The counsel for the prosecution's reading is clearly and obviously foundational and will be followed by a proper question. You will continue reading, Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Your Honor. And out of the center of the statue, there projected a giant phallus. And then Kathleen thinks how lucky she is. And she stared at the unnamed hero of the book. And the first of her 7 minutes begins. Now, Jerry, do you recognize that as the part you reread several times?
Yes, sir.
Did you feel at the time it was artistic writing?
I didn't think about the writing.
Face the court, Jerry. Do you feel the author was trying nothing more than excite the reader?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, but I must object to the district attorney's constant leading and suggestive questioning. This examination is highly inflammatory, and I ask to approach the bench to discuss the relevance of this one-sided interrogation.
Mr. Barrett, I find the line of questioning by the prosecutor to be quite pertinent. You are so advised that the bench will not tolerate any more interference from you. If you persist, you will be held in contempt of court. Now let us proceed with the trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have the court reporter repeat the last question.
You are instructed to do so.
Question by Mr. Duncan. Did you feel that the author was trying to do anything more than excite the reader?
No.
Did this passage and other passages excite you?
Yes, sir.
In what way did this excitement manifest itself?
Physically. I wanted to have a girl.
Do you mean you wanted to have sexual intercourse with a girl?
Yes, sir.
With some particular girl or just any girl?
Any girl.
What did you do next?
It was nighttime. I drove to the club, and I drank a couple of beers. There was this one chick. She looked just like what I imagined Kathleen.
Kathleen, the heroine of the 7 minutes.
Right. Anyhow, I offered her a ride.
By her, do you mean Sherry Moore?
Right. So I drove her to her apartment. We walked upstairs, and when she opened the door, I pushed her inside.
You did this how?
I had a knife.
I see. Did she undress?
She was scared, so she undressed.
What happened next?
I don't remember. I went kind of crazy, like it wasn't my own mind anymore.
Like it was Jadway's mind. Please continue, Jerry.
I forced myself on her.
Did she resist?
Yes.
But you violated her anyway.
I didn't know what I was doing.
Did you think of the 7 minutes at all?
When she was naked, yes. And I don't remember after that. Except that I did it. I couldn't help doing it.
And during the course of the sex act, Miss Moore was injured.
It was after, when I was trying to dress. She tried to hit me or get my knife. I don't remember which. And I think somehow she slipped and fell. It was an accident.
Did you know Miss Moore was unconscious?
I don't remember if I knew it or not. I only knew she had a roommate who might be coming back soon, so I just left. I felt miserable. I wanted to kill myself. Because this wasn't me what I had done. It wasn't my fault. I didn't know what I was doing.
Have you ever in your life behaved this way before?
No, sir.
Do you definitely feel the obscene pages in that book inflamed you until you were impelled to commit a criminal act?
Yes, sir. I can't explain any other reason for it.
Jerry, I want you to listen to me and listen to me carefully. From your own experience, do you believe there's a cause and effect? Now understand me. Cause and effect relationship between pornographic books and violent acts of crime.
I only know what happened. It happened to me.
No further questions, Your Honor.
defense has no questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Barrett, you mean you wish to reserve your cross-examination for later?
I mean, as far as the defense is concerned, the witness may be permanently excused.
We will take a 2-hour recess for lunch.
Hey, Barrett, why did you cross-examine? What happened? No comment. Are you throwing in the towel, Mr. Barrett?
No comment.
Very good. Said if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Is the heat too hot for you?
What the?
Well, you still haven't answered me. What the hell happened back there?
I traded off the cross-examination of Jerry Griffith for the examination of the legendary Cassie McGraw.
You mean she's alive?
She's very much alive, and what's more, we have an opportunity to use her.
Who'd she make the deal with?
Maggie Russell. Cassie read about the trial in her paper, wrote to Frank Griffith in defense of Chad Way. Maggie intercepted a postcard and kept it hidden from Griffith for 2 weeks. I'm going to see it later today.
Oh, you gotta be kidding. You mean you traded away Jerry for something scrawled on a postcard? Something you haven't even seen? And what if the whole trade with the con job is admitted by Maggie on behalf of the Griffith family?
Hey, I've got faith in Maggie.
Okay, man. You keep the faith.
Well, look at the other side of it, man. A living Cassie McGraw as a defense witness would be a sensation.
When is Maggie supposed to turn over this postcard?
Sometime later today, so you better call the signals from the start.
And to the best of your recollection, you have not omitted any pertinent facts surrounding your arrest at the Argus bookstore by Sergeant Kellogg of the County Sheriff's Office.
No, sir. Your witness. Were you previously arrested under the terms of the California Penal Code, Section 311-2, the section which states that every person who knowingly distributes obscene material is guilty of a misdemeanor?
Yes.
Did you plead not guilty?
No?
Did you plead guilty of selling obscene material?
Yes, but only on the advice of my attorney. He said if I pleaded guilty, I would get a lighter sentence.
But you admitted guilt.
Yes, I did.
Did you pay a fine?
Yes?
Did you go to jail?
No? Sentence was suspended.
Are you aware that a second offense is not a misdemeanor, but a felony?
Yes.
Are you cognizant of the fact that you can go to jail for a year and be fined up to $25,000?
Yes, I am.
Are you aware that the publisher, the Sanford House, handed the 7 Minutes with this garish poster prominently displayed in front of the Argus bookstore?
But there were other quotes on similar advertising that described it as a distinguished work of art.
No further questions, Your Honor.
When Sanford House contracted for the 7 Minutes, were you worried about it violating existing obscenity laws?
Not really, because I consider the book to be beautiful and touching. It's too well done to appeal to someone's prurient interest alone.
Do you consider the book to be beyond the customary limits of candor by contemporary community standards?
Certainly not. In fact, it's relatively mild by today's standards. When you consider that motion pictures and stage plays offer nudity, copulation, oral genital love, masturbation, homosexuality, lesbianism, community standards have radically changed.
Your witness, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Sanford, I have before me news clippings from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, which note the shaky financial position of Sanford House in the last 2 years. Are these news accounts substantially true?
Yes.
In short, since you took over Sanford House, it has not fared as well as it has in the past.
Sure. It depends on what you mean by doing well. It is true that the firm's book sales have gone down.
Perhaps you were desperate enough to ignore your father's previous good taste and tried to save your position in the firm by publishing an obscene book.
What's going on?
I've made a real mess of everything. Uncle Frank heard from Yerkes that we were seeing each other. Apparently he's known of our relationship for some time, but my rising to your defense over Jerry's well-being flipped him out. He told me to pack up and leave. He took my key and waited until I was outside on the front drive before slamming the door. So I lugged my things over here from across the street.
And the postcard from Cassie McGraw still in his desk.
I'm sorry.
Now, you had to give up your key, right?
The key to the front door, yes, but not the one to the rear service porch.
Then we're just gonna have to sweat him out. Guess I gotta get my hands on that postcard.
Mike, my bag! What time is it?
9:15.
Wait, the light went out. There's Uncle Frank coming out the door.
Well, here we go.
Oh, damn it.
Get it fast. I'll park in the street.
What the hell are you doing in my driveway? You're gonna get us both killed.
Look, sir, I'm sorry. I came by to see Miss Russell.
Well, Miss Russell doesn't live here anymore. Now, you get your lousy crate out of my driveway. Gotta put guys like you away.
You son of a bitch. What the hell are you doing here? Spying on me and my son? Come on, get out of the car and say something, you bastard. You're not in court now. Oh, I'd really like to clobber you. But you're not suckering me into that. Now, you get your ass out of here. If you're still snooping around after I park my car, I'm gonna kick the living hell out of you. Then I'll turn you over to the cops for prowling. How does that grab you?
That was a close call.
Let's get the hell out of here before I get my ass kicked. Well? It's beautiful. If Cassie McGraw backs up in court what she says in this postcard, the defense finally has a star witness. Now, where can I take you before I catch the next plane to Chicago?
I was hoping you'd take me home.
Home?
With you?
If Jadway were alive today, he'd be in his late 50s or early 60s. This woman is at least 15 or 20 years older.
Like all the old people in this sanitarium. I never think of Katie in terms of years. That reminds me of something. As long as I've been here, and that's going on 5 years, Katie's been getting flowers. Once a year. Always on her birthday.
Who sends Cassie the flowers?
I don't know. They're wired from Ryan's Flowers in Oakwood, California.
Hello.
Hi, Maggie.
Mike, I was praying it would be you. Have you heard? I mean about Sherry Moore. She died in her sleep.
Yeah. I just finished reading the story.
Are things any better in Chicago?
It couldn't be worse. Cassie McGraw will never speak on the witness stand. The poor woman's senile.
What a lousy brat.
She has moments when she's lucid. Like when she wrote the postcard. But today wasn't one of them.
I'm awfully sorry, Mike. All that trouble for nothing.
Well, Chicago may not be a total loss.
How do you mean?
She receives roses every year on her birthday. A standing order from Ryan's Flowers. I called Clay. He's going to check on it first thing tomorrow.
Mike, I might be able to help you. When I was working as Frank Griffith's secretary, we dealt exclusively with that florist.
So?
Why don't you let me get in touch with him? I'd love to help. Miss Cumberland, I'll bet you're wondering why I'm here.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am.
Well, the Griffiths have a lot to do with it. I'm terribly concerned about Jerry Griffith. You know the boy who's involved in the obscenity trial?
Yes. I watched it on the news last night.
It might sound strange to you, but one of my good friends, and I trust him implicitly, is Michael Barrett, the defense attorney in the case.
He's a very attractive young man indeed.
He genuinely believes that Jadway's The 7 Minutes is not obscene. Anyway, he's been racing all over the country trying to find witnesses who knew Jadway or who had some insight into his motives. He just visited with Cassie McGraw in Chicago.
Oh, really?
You're familiar with Ryan's Flowers?
Well, yes.
Mike asked me to check the records. Did he? I was surprised to learn that for the past 10 years, you have been paying for Cassie McGraw's birthday flowers.
How enterprising of you.
How well did you know Cassie McGraw?
Cassie McGraw was my private secretary when I lived and worked in Paris, 35 years ago. At that time, she was my only friend. Very few people know about Cassie, or about any of my life at the time, for that matter. Much of it was not terribly pleasant. Through the years, I've managed to keep it concealed.
But why?
You know of my long-standing friendship with the Griffiths, especially Frank's late wife. It was always difficult to hide my contempt of his behavior toward his son, Jerry. Now, it's my turn to stand up and be counted.
Baby doll. It's in the bag. We don't even need the chippies croaking.
Elmo can't buy that newspaper and the TV exposure.
It also opens up a whole new can of peas. We now have a case of murder one as well.
We can anticipate a probability factor of at least 90% for conviction.
Who's, Jerry's? I think the Griffith name has been muckraked enough.
Oh, relax, Frank. It's not your boy that's on trial. It's that obscene book together with that Ben Fremont, that purveyor of filth. The slut's death is just icing on the cake.
Frankly, I am more than a little bit concerned at the turn of events. It's a brand new ballgame with Sherry Moore's death.
Well, if it's any consolation, there's the closing argument Mike dictated about 4 this morning. Let's pick up on it. Might give us a shot in the arm.
Supreme Court Justice Douglas once said, "The idea of using censors to bar thoughts of sex is dangerous. A person without sex thoughts is abnormal. Sex thoughts may induce sex practices that make for better marital relations. Sex thoughts that make love more attractive certainly should not be outlawed. If the illicit is included, that should make no constitutional difference."
Your Honor, I call Constance Cumberland to the stand. Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name for the record.
Constance Cumberland.
Please be seated. Miss Cumberland, what is your present occupation?
I'm an actress. I have been an actress for some 35 years. In motion pictures and most recently on television.
How do you occupy yourself away from camera?
Well, if you mean what organizations do I belong to, I'm a working member of the League for Women Voters, the Reese Davis Center for Emotionally Disturbed Children, and occasionally I've given my public support to the Strength Through Decency League. Because, like anyone else with concern about today's society, I'm against pornography. Mainly because of the way it appeals to the young people who aren't mature enough to understand its implications.
Did you ever write and publish any books?
I did.
Were they works of fiction?
Some skeptics probably suggested as much. But I consider my autobiography to be a work of complete truth. What I mean is, everything that I published was honest. That doesn't mean I published everything.
Are you acquainted with the classical and modern fiction?
As a reader, yes, I am. Classical and modern. And also as an actress. I wouldn't want to bore the court with my credits, but...
Have you ever read a novel entitled The 7 Minutes by J.J. Jadway?
I have, sir.
Have you read it more than once?
I've read it many, many times.
How recently have you read the book in its entirety?
As recently as last night.
Are you familiar with the section 311.2 of the California Penal Code?
I am.
Do you know that the 7 minutes is being charged as obscene matter under that section of the code?
I do know that.
Do you consider the 7 minutes to be an obscene book?
Just a moment, Miss Cumberland. Your Honor, I object to defense counsel's question. No foundation has been laid to establish Miss Cumberland's qualifications to render such an opinion. And with all due respect to the acting abilities and other impressive credentials possessed by Miss Cumberland, I cannot imagine what bearing her opinion on the merits of this book could possibly have upon the proceedings.
Your Honor, I'd like to approach the bench.
Both attorneys shall approach the bench. Mr. Barrett, I'm deeply concerned with your present examination of Miss Cumberland. It appears you're seeking to elicit from this witness an opinion which she is not entitled to give. Mr. Duncan has probably interposed an objection which I mean to sustain.
Your Honor, if I may interrupt for just a moment. I assure you that Miss Cumberland's testimony is critical to the defense case.
Your Honor, I feel the defense counsel is testing the court's patience.
Let him who is without sin cast the first stone.
Don't you come on, gentlemen, will you restrain yourselves from this bickering? Now, Mr. Barrett, I have the greatest admiration for Miss Cumberland as an actress, but I fail to see what credentials she possesses which enables her to render an opinion concerning the 7 minutes, unless, for example, she is a qualified literary expert, and apparently she is not, because you have not qualified her as such. Therefore, she cannot give an expert opinion.
Your Honor, it is very...
Just a moment, Mr. Duncan. I want to hear from the defense.
I represent to you as an officer of the court that you will find this testimony to be extremely relevant and material.
May I make an offer of proof as to the nature of the so-called material? You have an offer of proof to make?
Your Honor, if I am forced to make an offer of proof at this time, the court is requiring me to disclose my defense to the prosecution in violation of my client's constitutional rights. This I respectfully refuse to do. But if the court will just bear with me, permit me a few more questions, I think you will readily see the relevance...
All right, but I'm warning you, Mr. Barrett. If the testimony, in fact, is inadmissible or highly prejudicial to the prosecution, I will take strong measures to deal with this.
Your Honor, may I...
Not at this time, Mr. Duncan. If the evidence is not relevant and material, you may move to strike the testimony at the appropriate time. Now, let's proceed.
Miss Cumberland, do you consider the 7 minutes to be an obscene book?
No, I do not. I consider it to be a highly moral book.
Do you believe the author of this work was pandering to prurient interest, to a shameful or morbid interest in nudity and sex in writing this book, as the state charges?
To which I object on the grounds that this witness is not qualified to answer the question. Mr. Duncan, I believe your objection to be well taken, but the court believes that the defense is entitled to some leeway in this area. Objection overruled. Mr. Barrett, will you please reframe the question?
Miss Cumberland, do you believe the author was, in fact, pandering to a shameful and morbid interest in nudity and sex?
I know for a fact that that author was not pandering to prurient interest.
Your Honor, I move to strike from the record Miss Cumberland's conclusion and conjecture that the author was not, in fact, pandering to prurient interest. Obviously, this witness could have no personal knowledge of the author's true intentions. Mr. Barrett, I indicated that I would give you leeway, but however, if you don't immediately get to your point, the court will sustain its own objection to your questions.
Very well, Your Honor. I will proceed directly to the point. Miss Cumberland, you stated that the book, The 7 Minutes, was not, in fact, written to appeal to prurient interest. May I inquire how you know?
Because I'm intimately acquainted with the circumstances surrounding the creation and the publication of The 7 Minutes.
Miss Cumberland, will you explain to the jurors in the court how you came by this intimate knowledge?
Gladly. No person alive was closer or better acquainted with J.J. Jadway than I am.
Miss Cumberland, are you implying that you were present in Paris when J.J. Jadway wrote The 7 Minutes?
I'm saying that I was in Paris when the book was written.
Do you know the author's motivations for writing it?
To which I object. The question calls for conclusion and speculation, in that Miss Cumberland could not possibly have any personal knowledge of the author's true motivations for writing The 7 Minutes.
Mr. Duncan, we are going to get on with this matter if it's the last thing we do. You will recall the court asked Miss Cumberland to explain to the jury how she has intimate knowledge of the circumstances under which The 7 Minutes was written. Now, the court will not tolerate any more interference of Mr. Barrett's questioning along these lines. Objection overruled. Mr. Barrett, will you proceed and ask another question?
Thank you, Your Honor. Miss Cumberland, you're familiar with the testimony presented by the prosecution. Does this first-hand knowledge which you possess confirm or contradict the testimony given in this courtroom by the people's witnesses?
My information about the real Jadway and the real purpose in writing and publishing this book completely and entirely contradicts the evidence so far presented in this court.
You do understand that the previous witnesses were sworn, gave their testimony under oath, and risked facing a charge of perjury if they lied.
They did not lie. They simply did not tell the truth, merely because they were ignorant of the truth. Let me explain. Everything heard in this courtroom until now about J.J. Jadway, and I'm completely fluent with all of the testimony, has been the purest fiction. And this fiction was deliberately planned and perpetrated by the author for reasons involving the author's private life.
Let me go directly to the salient point at hand. You indicated in earlier testimony that you had published your own autobiography, which was a bestseller, as I recall. Have you ever written or published any other books?
Yes, I have.
How many other books?
One book.
Was that book published under the name of Constance Cumberland?
No, it was not. It was published under a pseudonym.
Can you tell the court the title of that book and the pseudonym under which you wrote it?
The book was The 7 Minutes by J.J. Jadway. I am J.J. Jadway.
Order in the court! Order in the court! Miss Cumberland, the court has already heard The 7 Minutes read aloud. So we might more clearly determine the significance of what we have already heard. Would you mind telling us the themes and the symbols that you attempted to convey in writing the book?
May I have a glass of water, please? Thank you. The 7 Minutes is composed of 7 chapters, each chapter representing 1 minute in the mind of this young woman, Kathleen, who is lying on a bed having sexual intercourse with an unnamed, unseen man. It begins with a description of her thoughts and feelings for her male bed partner. Kathleen's mind reacts to the coupling on 2 levels. On the first, she records her immediate physical sensations, and on the second, inspired by her gradually mounting passion, she recollects fragments of sensual experiences from her youthful past with 3 actual men in her life who had been her lovers. The thrust of the novel is drawn out of the fact that Kathleen decides to accept one of these men as her lifetime mate. The one she had taken to her bed this night, the very one who shares her 7 minutes. Not until the last page, while she is gasping her love for him in the final throes of her passion, does she call out and reveal the name of the one she has chosen. You see, through her vast sexual experience, she has managed to liberate a sensitive but potentially impotent man, the man she honestly loved. In writing The 7 Minutes, I finally found freedom myself, just as I had hoped I might liberate others from fear and guilt and shame.
Do you know of any other readers for which it has performed this service?
The words in The 7 Minutes freed a young man only today and enabled him to confide to me the truth about himself, the truth he has told no other person until now. Jerry Griffith was not driven to commit rape by reading this book. He did not try to violate Sherry Moore against her will. He tried, but at Sherry's own invitation, but he failed then, as he had always failed before, and as he would fail today. Because you see, Jerry Griffith was then, was before, and even today, is still sexually impotent. He is incapable of attaining an erection.
Miss Cumberland, did the verdict for acquittal surprise you?
What surprised me more was the very fact that I was able to reveal myself in court.
There was testimony about your supposed suicide. You look pretty good to me right now, so obviously you're alive and kicking. Did you ever really try to kill yourself?
Well, that whole incredible story was arranged by a poet friend of mine, a loyal and dear friend named Sean O'Flanagan. It was simple enough for him to write and plant the obituary of J.J. Jadway. Cassie McGraw arranged a private memorial service for the fictitious Jadway. I found it wiser to be somewhere else.
So, Miss Cumberland, what made you decide to renounce the Jadway identity?
Well, I had an offer from a Hollywood producer, someone I'd met in Paris, to appear in The Gold Diggers of 1938. Anyway, I went to Hollywood, made Gold Diggers, and you know the rest.
Be nice. You won.
I'll be right back.
Oh, Mr. Barrett, I don't know if you heard me with all the noise after the verdict, but I did congratulate you.
I appreciate that, sir.
You won the preliminary. You got the 7 minutes off the hook. But the main event is still murder one, and I intend to prosecute Perkins to the full limit of the law. Jerry Griffith has a debt as well. As an accomplice, he shares the responsibility for the crime.
He won't run from that. When he has his day in court, I'll be standing right next to him.
You proved that one of my witnesses perjured himself, and that another one unwittingly lied. But you didn't prove, at least not to me, that his filthy book belongs in a decent household. And Jadway or Cumberland, I still believe that 7 minutes is obscene and harmful and should have been found guilty. And as for the author of that perverted book, Constance Cumberland stands as a black stain in our society.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion.
Barrett, such books are dangerous and should not be published because they can hurt immature, disturbed adults. Even worse, they can overstimulate a child before he's ready to accept his sex thoughts as natural and drive him into damaging sexual fantasy.
In other words, Mr. Duncan, you feel that all literature and all ideas should be aimed at satisfying the 12-year-old reader. You're a pitiful hypocrite and a political opportunist to boot. You spout your clever rhetoric about God, mother, and country, and yet you connive and scheme without regard to anyone but yourself. It amazes me that an intelligent man cannot direct his energies and resources into what is good for the community he's supposed to protect.
Instead, spends his time racing off to court seeking a ban on those things he arbitrarily feels is bad for us.
You've got your goddamn nerve. You win one lousy case, you think you're Appley Bailey. Let me tell you one thing. As long as there are books like the 7 Minutes or anything else I feel jeopardizes the moral fiber of this community, I'll keep fighting them.
Fair warning. But as long as you keep strong-arming yourself ahead, I'll be fighting you. Maggie, if you knew all along about Jerry's sexual problem, if you knew he was incapable of rape, why the hell didn't you say something?
Because I wasn't all that certain that he was impotent on the night of the so-called rape.
Where did Jerry and Miss Cumberland finally get together?
At your house. Yesterday morning, while you were still in Chicago. I took the chance of pretending to him that I knew the truth about his night with Sherry Moore. At that point, Jerry broke down and confessed everything. Miss Cumberland was really touched. She said if she could give Jerry the courage to stand up and confess the truth, then perhaps she herself would find the courage to do the same in court.
Maggie, you're beautiful. Just beautiful.